The obsidian heart of the Cathar Imperium thrummed with a silence so profound it was a physical weight. Within the grand conclave chamber, a cavern of polished, light-devouring stone that had witnessed the birth and death of stars, the air itself seemed brittle. A singular, colossal holographic display dominated the space, its light the only true illumination, casting long, skeletal shadows from the crystalline figures of the assembled High Council. The display showed a starfield, cold and impartial, but at its center hung an object that defied every tenet of Cathar engineering and military doctrine. It was a void within the void, a shape of absolute, non-reflective black, a brutalist scar on the velvet tapestry of space. It was the human vessel. Emperor Vorlag, his ancient crystalline carapace a network of fine, weary cracks that shimmered with the faint, violet light of deep contemplation, rested his multifaceted claws upon the throne's armrest. The gesture was slow, a geological process in itself. He had reigned for millennia, had seen empires of fire and dust rise and fall before the might of the Cathar legions. He had never seen this. He had never felt this. A cold, creeping uncertainty that was antithetical to the Cathar spirit of absolute, unwavering dominance. "It has not moved in 3 cycles," Warlord Xyler's voice grated, a sharp, percussive resonance that vibrated through the chamber floor. His own carapace was a masterpiece of polished, obsidian-sharp edges, iridescent with the crimson shimmer of perpetual aggression. "It sits at the edge of the veiled nebula, a sentinel of nothing. It broadcasts no challenges. It flies no banners. This passivity is a mockery, a strategic insolence we cannot afford to tolerate." He gestured with a sharp, bladed appendage toward the display. "Our patrols report their lesser ships are erratic, chaotic. Some are little more than hollowed asteroids with drives crudely affixed. Others are sleek predators that dance on the edges of our sensor range. They probe, they retreat. They follow no recognizable pattern of reconnaissance. They are vermin, nibbling at the foundations of the Imperium, and that silent behemoth is their nest." Archivist Prime Ilthana shifted, her own form smoother, more opalescent, her carapace glowing with a soft, inquisitive cyan. "Vermin do not compose symphonies, Warlord. They do not transmit mathematical proofs as a greeting." Her voice was a low, melodic chime, a stark contrast to Xyler's guttural pronouncements. "We have intercepted their deep space cultural transmissions. They are a species of profound contradiction. They broadcast images of appalling violence one moment and philosophical treatises on the nature of compassion the next. Their art is a tempest of emotion, their science a furious, unrestrained explosion of discovery. To dismiss them as vermin is to blind ourselves to the truth of what they are, a variable we have not yet learned to quantify." "A variable can be a threat," Xyler countered, his form flaring with a brighter crimson. "And a threat must be eliminated before it can metastasize. That thing possesses energy readings that are nonsensical. Its core signature is masked by a field our finest deep scanners cannot penetrate. It displaces more mass than a dozen of our mightiest void carapaces, yet it drifts as if massless. It is a weapon, a super weapon held in reserve. They are waiting, studying us, finding our weaknesses before they strike. It is the only logical conclusion." Vorlag's ancient gaze remained fixed on the silent shape. Logic. The Cathar Imperium was built on logic, on the unassailable truth that power, clearly displayed and ruthlessly applied, was the only stable foundation for a galactic civilization. All species they had encountered and subsequently subjugated or assimilated had understood this calculus. They either bowed to superior strength or were broken by it. Their ships were designed to reflect this philosophy, jagged crystalline warships that bristled with energy projectors, their purpose clear, their intent undeniable. They were instruments of power, and they looked it. The human ship looked like nothing. It was an absence, an idea that had not yet taken form, and that more than any weapon was what disturbed the Emperor. "The skirmish at Omicron 7, Xyler pressed, his voice sharp as fractured crystal. "Our patrol, the Iron Mandible Asterisk, engaged a human exploratory vessel. The humans were warned to retreat from our designated territory. They responded with an ambiguous signal and held their position. The Iron Mandible acted in accordance with Imperial doctrine and neutralized the threat. A decisive, necessary action." Ilthana's cyan light deepened. "Neutralized? Warlord, your own battle log shows the human ship made no aggressive maneuvers. It was scanning the system's dead star. It did not raise its shields. It did not power its weapons. The ambiguous signal was a desperat. High-bandwidth transmission of their ship's entire scientific databanks. They were not refusing to leave. They were offering us their findings. They were attempting to share knowledge. We answered their offering with plasma fire." Her voice, though calm, carried a heavy, sorrowful resonance. We have spilled first blood, and we do not even know if they perceive it as an act of war or simply a catastrophic failure in communication. The distinction is irrelevant, Xyler boomed. Strength is the only communication that matters in the void. They now know our borders have meaning. They know there are consequences. Let their silent godship contemplate that. The Emperor finally stirred, his ancient head tilting slowly. The movement sent faint, dusty motes of crystalline dust drifting into the air. You speak of logic, warlord, but your logic is born of our history. You see a nail, and your only thought is of the hammer. You see a new species, and your only thought is of the familiar path of conquest. He turned his gaze to the Archivist Prime. And you, Ilthana, you see a puzzle, a new text to be deciphered. You are fascinated by their chaos, but fascination can be as blinding as prejudice. He gestured a claw toward the silent ship on the screen. I see an answer to a question we have not yet thought to ask. The Cathar have endured for eons because we are predictable. Our strength is in our rigidity. Our doctrines are carved from the bedrock of 100 victorious wars. We have never faced a species that operates outside those doctrines. We have never faced a species that builds ships which do not appear to be ships, that sends scientists to a military border, that responds to a warning with a gift of knowledge moments before their annihilation. A tense silence descended again. The council members resonated with their own quiet anxieties. They were the apex predators of this galactic arm, an empire built on the crushed remnants of lesser civilizations. The idea of a peer was unsettling, the idea of a superior was unthinkable, but the idea of something entirely other was a terror that struck at the core of their identity. The humans were not playing the same game. It was possible they did not even know a game was being played. The reports from our intelligence assets on the fringe worlds are disquieting, Ilthana said softly, breaking the stillness. The humans are not conquerors. They arrive in systems, they trade, they share technology, but they do not demand tribute or fealty. They have established small enclaves, but not fortresses. They are integrating. The lesser species, the ones we deemed unworthy of assimilation, are flocking to them. They offer medicine, infrastructure, information. They ask for nothing in return but cultural exchange and mutual respect. A subtle poison, Xyler sneered. They rot the Imperium from the edges inward. They win the hearts of the weak so they will not have to break their ships. It is conquest by other means, a coward's strategy. Or a confident one, Ilthana countered. Perhaps they do not need to conquer because they do not feel threatened. Perhaps their definition of power is not the ability to control others, but the ability to exist without needing to. The philosophical turn of the conversation was wearing on Xyler's patience. His crimson aura pulsed erratically. This is pointless sophistry. A fleet must be dispatched. We must force their hand. We will approach the vessel, demand its surrender and the immediate withdrawal of all human presence from our quadrant. If they refuse, we will unmake that silent insult stone by stone, atom by atom. We will show them what true power looks like. Before the Emperor could respond, a new chime echoed through the chamber, a priority one alert from the Imperial Sensorium. A junior officer, his carapace a pale, nervous gray, manifested as a shimmering hologram in the center of the room. He bowed low, his form trembling. Your Imperial Majesty Warlord Archivist Prime, the hologram stammered. Sector Command reports the anomaly is in motion. Every eye in the chamber snapped to the main display. The silent black shape, the vessel that had been an immovable object for months, was finally moving. But it was not moving toward Cathar Prime. It was not moving toward any Imperial holding or strategic location. It was gliding with an impossible, silent grace deeper into the desolate, unmapped expanse of the Veiled Nebula, a region of space even the Cathar considered worthless, a graveyard of dead stars and rogue planetoids. Xyler's crimson light intensified into a furious glare. It is a feint. They draw us out into unstructured space, away from our fortifications. Or, Ilthana murmured, her cyan glow filled with a dawning, terrifying curiosity, it is going somewhere. It has a purpose we cannot begin to comprehend. Emperor Vorlag watched the dark shape recede into the swirling, ghostly gases of tea. Nebula, the feeling of uncertainty in his ancient mind was crystallizing, hardening into something else. It was not fear. It was a profound, soul-shaking premonition. The Cathar had just witnessed the first move in a game whose rules they did not know, played on a board larger than they had ever imagined. And for the first time in 10,000 years of unbroken rule, he felt as if the Imperium was no longer the most significant power in the room. Assemble a fleet, the Emperor commanded, his voice a low, final rumble that tolerated no argument. Warlord Xyler, your finest warships will escort, but you will not lead. He turned his ancient eyes to the Archivist Prime. Ilthana, you will command this expedition. Your vessel will be the flagship. You are not to engage. You are not to threaten. You are to follow that ship, and you are to watch. You will learn the answer to the question it poses." He paused, his gaze returning to the screen where the human ship was now just a fading speck of black against the nebula's ghostly light. "Learn what it is they value enough to build such a vessel, for in that knowledge lies the truth of their strength and the key to our survival." The journey into the veiled nebula was an exercise in tension. Ilthana stood on the command bridge of the glimmering Mandate Asterisk, a vessel designed for diplomacy and deep space research, its crystalline structure more intricate and less aggressive than the warships that flanked it. The void carapaces of Xyler's fleet, a collection of brutal, menacing shapes, hung in the void behind them, a constant, predatory reminder of the warlord's descent. They were a fleet divided in purpose, one part seeking to understand, the other straining to destroy. For weeks, they followed. The human ship never accelerated, never deviated from its slow, inexorable course. It was like following a continent adrift on a silent ocean. It ignored their presence completely. No hails were answered. No signals were sent. The silence was more unnerving than any threat could have been. It spoke of a confidence that was absolute, a focus so complete that a trailing fleet of Cathar warships was of no more consequence than dust motes in its path. Inside the glimmering Mandate Asterisk, Ilthana and her crew of xenolinguists and cultural analysts worked ceaselessly. They analyzed the faint energy bleed from the human ship's drives, finding it to be a form of controlled space-time manipulation, so elegant and efficient it made the Cathar's own brute-force singularity drives seem like primitive combustion engines. They studied the subtle gravitational lensing around its hull, confirming its mass was even greater than their initial estimates. It was a moving worldlet, a habitat of incomprehensible scale. "Its purpose cannot be martial," lead analyst T.A. Track chimed, his own carapace a thoughtful shade of green. "There are no visible weapon emplacements, no hangar bays large enough to launch a significant strike force. The power signature, though immense, is stable, harmonic. The signature of a Cathar warship in a state of readiness is a jagged, snarling waveform. This is a hum, a constant, peaceful resonance." "A deception," came a transmission from Xyler's flagship, the inevitable Judgment Asterisk. The warlord's voice crackled with impatience. "They mask their capabilities. They lure us into a false sense of security before revealing their true nature. Archivist Prime, your caution will be our doom. You must allow me to conduct a proximity scan, a single probe." "Permission denied, warlord," Ilthana replied, her voice firm, the scion of her form unwavering. The Emperor's command was to observe. "We will not be the ones to provoke a reaction. We will maintain this distance until the ship reveals its destination." The tension between the two Cathar factions simmered. A cold war played out in the silent depths of the nebula. Xyler saw weakness in Ilthana's patience. Ilthana saw a catastrophic lack of imagination in Xyler's aggression. They were the two halves of the Cathar soul, logic and force, and they were at war with each other as much as with the unknown ahead. Then, after a journey that had stretched the nerves of every crew member to their breaking point, the human ship began to decelerate. It came to a halt in the heart of a truly desolate star system. A single, cold, brown dwarf star, long dead, orbited by a handful of frozen, barren rock worlds. The system was a cosmic tomb, devoid of resources, strategic value, or life. It was, by any Cathar metric, the most useless piece of space in the entire nebula. "Here." R's voice boomed over the comms, dripping with contempt. "They have led us to a graveyard. This is the final insult. They are laughing at us." Ilthana did not respond. Her full attention was on the human vessel. Something was happening. For the first time, its energy signature was changing. The deep, stable hum was rising in pitch, becoming a crescendo of unimaginable power. The black hull, which had absorbed all light for weeks, began to shimmer. Faint lines of pure white light traced across its surface, revealing seams and panels that had been perfectly invisible before. The ship was unfurling. Vast sections of the hull peeled back, not like armor plating, but like the petals of a colossal flower. They unfolded into massive, miles-wide structures that glittered with internal light, arrays of technology so complex they defied analysis. The ship was transforming, its brutalist, monolithic form giving way to something of breathtaking, intricate beauty. It was no longer a void. It was a lattice of light and structure, a man-made star being born in the darkness. A message suddenly appeared on their main view screen. Not a voice transmission, but pure, elegant Cathar text, its syntax perfect. "We invite you to observe. Maintain your current distance for your own safety." The simple, calm statement was a thunderclap in the silence. They knew they were there all along. They had permitted the pursuit. Ilthana's mandibles trembled slightly. This was it, the moment of revelation. From the core of the transformed human vessel, a beam of energy emerged. But it was not the violent, destructive lance of a weapon. It was a coherent, impossibly dense stream of pure white light, less a beam and more a flowing river of creation. It reached out across millions of miles of space and struck the largest of the system's dead worlds. On the bridge of the inevitable Judgment Asterisk, Xyler watched in triumph. At last, the weapon is revealed. They mean to shatter the planet as a demonstration of their power. But the planet did not shatter. The beam did not impact its surface. It pierced through the frozen crust, plunging deep into the planet's iron core. The sensors on the asterisk glimmering mandate screamed. Energy readings spiked to levels that were theoretically impossible. Tectonic stress, geothermal activity, magnetic field generation, all were registering on a world that had been geologically dead for 5 billion years. The planet began to glow from within. First a dull, angry red, then a brilliant, molten orange. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, not from destruction, but from expansion. The entire world was shuddering, convulsing, being reborn. Volcanoes of ice and rock erupted, spewing superheated gases into the void, forming the first wisps of a primordial atmosphere. The beam from the human ship held steady, a celestial umbilical cord pouring life and energy into the dead world. They were not destroying a planet. They were igniting it. They were restarting its geological heart. A profound silence fell over the bridge of the glimmering mandate asterisk. The Cathar crew, beings from a culture that saw planets as things to be conquered, mined, and controlled, could only stare in mute, uncomprehending awe. This was not war. This was not dominance. This was an act of creation on a scale they had only ever attributed to the fundamental forces of the universe itself. "What is this?" a junior analyst whispered, his carapace flickering with a pale, fearful light. "What are they doing?" Ilthana found her voice, a chime that was barely audible. "They are not planet breakers," she breathed. "They are world forgers." The full implication of the scene crashed down upon her. The resources, the energy, the sheer scientific mastery required to do this, it dwarfed the Cathar Imperium's entire military-industrial complex. A species that could build new worlds from scratch had no need to fight over old ones. Their chaotic expansion, their lack of a centralized military strategy, their strange, peaceful interactions with lesser species, it all suddenly made a terrifying kind of sense. They were not exploring the galaxy in search of conquest. They were gardeners searching for fallow ground. A new transmission came through, this time a visual. A new window opened on the view screen, and for the first time the Cathar looked upon the face of a human. She was an older female of her species, her face lined with age but her eyes sharp and clear. Her hair was silver, and she wore a simple dark blue uniform devoid of rank or adornment. She sat in a room that was clean, functional, and well lit. There was no throne, no ceremonial armor, no symbols of power. Behind her was a simple window, and through it, the impossible sight of the glowing, newborn planet was visible. "I am Ambassador Eva Rostova of the Terran Confederacy," she said, her voice calm and measured, the Cathar translation flawless and without accent. "We apologize for our silence. The final calculations for planetary core reignition require absolute concentration. We trust our work has not alarmed you." Alarmed. The word was so inadequate it was almost absurd. Xyler's furious voice cut through the comms, broadcasting on the fleet-wide channel. "What is the meaning of this display? What is that?" "Device," the human Rostova turned her gaze, slightly as if addressing Xyler directly. "This vessel is designated the TCS Genesis Asterisk. It is not a device. It is a crucible, a tool for reversing entropy. We find systems lost to heat death, and we give them a second chance. We bring life where there is none." R's confusion was palpable, a radiating wave of frustration and disbelief. Ilthana could feel his entire worldview crumbling. He finally managed to articulate the one thought consuming him, a choked, guttural rasp that echoed through the bridge of the glimmering mandate asterisk. "That is not a warship," he stammered, the words a mix of denial and dawning horror. "There's no way that's a human's warship. What is asterisk it?" Rostova's expression softened with something Ilthana could not immediately identify. It was not pity. It was understanding. "You define a ship by its capacity for destruction. It is a logical, if limited, perspective. To us, the greatest tool is not one that can end a world, but one that can begin one. Power is not the ability to command, but the ability to create." She paused, and her calm eyes seemed to pierce through the screen, looking directly at Ilthana. "We are aware of the incident at Omicron 7. We mourn the loss of our science team, but we do not see it as an act of malice. We see it as a failure to communicate, a tragedy born of misunderstanding between two cultures meeting for the first time. We hold no desire for retribution. The universe is vast and filled with far too much silence. There is no need to add to it. The sheer ethical and philosophical weight of her statement stunned the Cathar. The humans were not just technologically superior. They were operating from a moral framework that was entirely alien to the Imperium's history of conquest and retribution. They possessed the power to unmake the Cathar fleet with a flicker of their unimaginable energies, yet they spoke of mourning and misunderstanding. They were being offered forgiveness for a transgression they had not even realized was so profound. Rostova made a gesture, and a torrent of data flowed into the asterisk glimmering mandates asterisk computers. Schematics, energy readings, the complete scientific principles behind the asterisk Genesis asterisk vessel's operation. They were giving it away. They were sharing the secrets to their godlike power as freely as they had offered the data from their doomed science ship. "We have found that conflict is inefficient," Rostova continued, her voice gentle but firm. "It consumes resources, time, and potential that could be used to foster new life, to explore new ideas. Your Imperium is ancient, powerful, and ordered. We are young, dynamic, and chaotic, as you might see it. We do not wish to be your enemies. We believe there is much we could learn from each other." Ilthana finally found her voice again, her chimes resonating with a newfound clarity. She looked at the nascent, glowing world on her view screen, then at the calm, unassuming face of the human ambassador. She saw the future, and it was nothing like the past. "Ambassador Rostova," Ilthana said, her voice filled with the weight of her entire civilization's dawning realization. "I believe you are correct. I believe our failure to communicate has been catastrophic. We accept your data, and we would be honored to begin a dialogue." Across the void, on the bridge of the inevitable judgment asterisk, Warlord Xyler fell silent. His crimson aura faded to a dull, confused gray. He was a warrior without a war to fight, a hammer in a universe that had just revealed itself to be made not of nails, but of gardens waiting to be planted. His entire existence had been predicated on a lie. That strength was the ultimate virtue. He was now staring at a power so profound it had no need for strength at all. Ilthana's return to the Grand Conclave chamber was not a report. It was a schism. The holographic display no longer showed a silent, threatening ship. It showed a time-lapsed recording of a barren rock transforming into a swirling, molten sphere, a new atmosphere condensing around it like a veil. It showed the schematics of the asterisk Genesis asterisk vessel, a design so advanced it made Cathar engineering look like primitive blacksmithing. And it showed the calm, patient face of Ambassador Eva Rostova. The chamber was in an uproar. The assembled nobles and military commanders resonated with a cacophony of disbelief, fear, and outrage. Xyler stood before the throne, his carapace a dull, lifeless gray, the fire of his aggression extinguished, replaced by a cold, hard confusion. He had seen it with his own eyes, but his mind refused to accept the implications. "It is a trick," one of the elder warlords boomed, his form flashing with agitated crimson. "A technological illusion designed to disarm us. No species would wield such power and not use it to dominate. It is against the fundamental nature of sentient life." "The fundamental nature of Cathar life, perhaps," Ilthana countered, her cyan glow calm and resolute. Ishi stood in the center of the chamber, an anchor of reason in a sea of dogma. "We have projected our own image onto the universe for so long we have forgotten that other images can exist. The humans do not seek dominion over others. They seek dominion over the laws of physics. They do not conquer territory, they create it. Their power is not a threat to our existence, but a challenge to our philosophy." She turned to face the throne, her gaze meeting the ancient, cracked carapace of her emperor. "Majesty, they offer not a challenge of arms, but a challenge of spirit. They have shown us a path that is not built on subjugation. They have freely given us the science behind their greatest creation. This is not the act of an enemy. It is the act of a potential partner who believes we are capable of understanding." Xyler finally spoke, his voice a low, gravelly rumble, devoid of its usual arrogance. "A species that can ignite a dead world can just as easily extinguish a living one. Their power, whatever its stated purpose, remains the single greatest threat the Imperium has ever faced. To trust them is to place a blade to our own throat and hope they do not close their fist." The chamber fell silent, awaiting the Emperor's judgment. The two paths lay before them. The old way of fear, suspicion, and preemptive violence, or a new, terrifying path of trust and collaboration. Vorlag was silent for a long time, his ancient mind processing millennia of Cathar history, of wars won and enemies crushed, all of it measured against the single, placid image of a human offering knowledge freely. He saw the trap in Xyler's logic, the prison of their own making. To fear the humans' power was to admit that, if the Cathar possessed such power, they would use it for conquest. It was an admission of their own spiritual limitation. Blade has been at our throats since the moment their ship appeared, Vorlag finally said, his voice resonating with an ancient, weary authority that silenced all dissent. We simply did not see it. We believed the threat was what they would do to us. The true threat was what we would do to ourselves in our ignorance. He rose slowly from his throne, a monumental effort. Ilthana is correct. The challenge has been issued, not to our fleets, but to our souls. We will answer it. He turned to the Archivist Prime. Open a channel to Ambassador Rostova. Inform her that the Cathar Imperium accepts her offer of dialogue. I will speak with her myself. It is time the Emperor of a dying philosophy spoke to the representative of a new one. The establishment of a formal communion was a momentous occasion. In the grand conclave chamber, the central display now showed Ambassador Rostova live from the bridge of the Genesis asterisk. Beside her image, Emperor Vorlag sat upon his throne, the two leaders separated by a gulf of space but united in a fragile, unprecedented moment of diplomacy. Ilthana and a select few council members stood by, witnesses to history. Emperor Vorlag, Rostova began, her voice retaining its calm, respectful tenor, I am honored. Your willingness to engage in this dialogue gives us great hope for a peaceful future between our peoples. Your hope is a novel concept for us, Ambassador, Vorlag rumbled. We have long operated on certainty and strength. Hope was a luxury we could not afford. He gestured to the chamber around them. This hall has seen the planning of countless wars. It has never hosted a conversation such as this. You have shaken the foundations of our empire, and you did so without firing a single shot. That was never our intention, Rostova replied. Our intention is simply to exist, to learn, and to create. We have found that the universe is a profoundly large and lonely place. The discovery of another advanced, thoughtful species like the Cathar is a cause for celebration, not conflict. As they spoke, a quiet but insistent chime began to sound from a secondary console on the bridge of the Genesis, visible behind Rostova. One of her human crew members touched a control, his brow furrowing. He leaned over and whispered something to her. Rostova's calm expression did not break, but a new intensity entered her eyes, a subtle shift from passive diplomacy to active, focused analysis. Forgive me, Emperor, she said, her voice now carrying a different weight. My ship's long-range resonance sensors are detecting an anomaly. It appears to be emanating from the region of space you call the Veiled Nebula, where we have been working. On the Cathar side, Ilthana signaled to her own sensor analysts. Confirm, we are reading something. It is incredibly faint, subquantum, buried beneath the background radiation of the cosmos. We have never had instrumentation sensitive enough to detect it before. Rostova's gaze was now fixed on a screen outside the Cathar's view. The Genesis is designed to listen to the deep structures of spacetime. It has to in order to safely manipulate them. We are amplifying the signal now, filtering out trillions of years of cosmic noise. The main holographic display in the conclave chamber flickered. The image of the newly born planet vanished. In its place, a complex, oscillating waveform began to resolve itself. It was not a random pattern. It was structured, mathematical. It was a signal. It's old, Ilthana breathed, her cyan light pulsing with awe and dread. The redshift is impossible. This signal has been traveling for. It predates our species. It predates the formation of our home star. It predates ours as well, Rostova said, her voice now devoid of all diplomatic pleasantries, replaced by a cold, sharp seriousness that sent a chill through the chamber. By our calculations, this signal was sent when this galaxy was still in its infancy. It has been echoing in the dark for eons. The waveform on the display stabilized, the message, now fully decoded, resolving into a repeating sequence of mathematical constants, prime numbers, and a single, heartbreakingly simple visual diagram. It showed a galaxy, much like their own, and then a vector, a line pointing away from it, pointing directly toward the vast, empty chasm of intergalactic space. And then it showed a second image, the same galaxy, but it was being consumed. A creeping, shadowy corruption was spreading from one edge, extinguishing its stars, silencing its worlds. It was not a natural phenomenon. It was an invasion. The signal was not a greeting. It was not a monument to a long-dead civilization. It was a warning. A distress call left in a bottle and thrown into the cosmic ocean billions of years ago by a people facing an unimaginable, galaxy-devouring foe. A foe that was coming from the void between galaxies. A profound, absolute silence descended upon the grand conclave chamber. The Cathar, an empire that had defined itself as the ultimate power, the pinnacle of evolution in their corner of the universe, were suddenly, horrifyingly, recontextualized. They were not the masters of the game. They were not even players. They were motes of dust on a board they had just discovered, in a game that had been playing out on a scale of time and space that shattered their every conception of reality. Their recent conflict, their debates over borders and philosophy, their posturing and their pride. All of it felt so small, so pathetically insignificant in the face of this ancient, silent scream. Emperor Vorlag stared at the waveform, at the diagram of the dying galaxy. The cracks on his ancient carapace seemed to deepen. He had spent his long life managing the Cathar's dominance over a few thousand star systems, believing it to be the grandest stage of all. He now understood that they had been living in a single, quiet room of a vast, dark house, and they had just heard a floorboard creak in the hallway. He turned his gaze from the hologram to the image of Ambassador Rostova. Her face was grim, her eyes filled with the same terrible, dawning comprehension. In that moment, they were not Cathar and human. They were not emperor and ambassador. They were two sentient beings, representatives of two young, naive species, staring together into an abyss that was far older and hungrier than either of them could have ever conceived. The real mystery was not the nature of humanity. The real mystery had been waiting, patiently, in the silence of the void, for someone to finally build an instrument sensitive enough to hear it cry for help. "Ambassador," Emperor Vorlag said, his voice a low, somber rumble that now carried the weight of a truly galactic perspective. "It appears our dialogue must take a new direction. It seems you and I have much more to discuss." The war for the soul of the Cathar Imperium was over. The struggle for the survival of everything had just begun.